Hi.
Hello.
Hi, team. Hi.
Hi, Tamara.
Thanks for doing this. This is such a beautiful movie. Do I have to introduce these people? This is Azazel Jacobs. This is Carrie Coon. This is Elizabeth Olsen. And that's Natasha Lyonne. And I'm Tamara Jenkins, and I'm so happy to talk to you guys about the movie. I saw it, I don't know, a month ago, but then re-saw it. But I only just, this is on film. It looks so gorgeous in here. It's really nice. All right, so I'm going to ask the first question, which is, what was your first, like the inkling, the smallest seed? What was the first thing you saw or thought about that made you want to launch into this as a movie story?
Oh. All right, well, I will say this, that, all right, so I started going through this process with my parents, and I truly did not have much to cling to in terms of a path other than your film, The Savages. Like, I kept thinking about
Savages.
Like, I just kept thinking, like, that this experience is so, I know that this is natural. I know this is the way that, in best case scenario, it works out, that we outlive our parents. But it felt, everything about it has felt really wrong and crazy and just confusing. And just to have your story to just cling to and not be like, okay, this is somewhat like, there's this feelings, this, it was extremely helpful. And I think that you know, just the idea is that I wanted to write something to deal with a lot of my fears and a lot of my hopes, and something that would be, like, I love making films, so to bring that into something that I've been, you know, not having a terrible time with was a good way to kind of balance things.
Okay, I'm gonna die because that was the nicest thing. That's really touching, and he's never told me that, so I have no idea. That was, wow. So anyway, I'm really touched by that. So I can't even talk now. I'm so moved. So according to the notes and what I've heard you talk about, which is that you wrote this with these three actresses in mind. First of all, you're so brave to do that, because what are the odds that they're going to all be available and that they're all going to like the script and all of that stuff? Of course they did. But even just that they were all available at the same time is a miracle. Were you really like sitting there with like pictures of them on your wall while you were writing?
Oh, no, not that.
Thank God.
that'd be,
I do that sometimes. Yeah. That's why I ask. I'm sorry.
No, but I definitely heard their voices, and I definitely just started picturing them. I think it's like, for me, I see actors, I become a very big fan, and I just have them, and I try to carry them with me, and sometimes they just suddenly are there in my mind, and this is what happened. I was probably like a third of the way into it when I realized, like, I was writing for a very specific rhythm for each of these characters, and each of them had such specific approaches and specific, you know, everything about them was so specific. And I didn't think, I just felt like I wanted to swing as hard as I could, and I wanted to aim as high as possible, and just not think about, oh, if that's not going to work out. I just never went to that place of thinking, what would I do? I just felt like that I just hoped for it and just tried not to think about the other side. And then, yeah, they responded.
When you just talked about, you know, you had the rhythm of their voices in your head as you were writing, there's so much in the movie about language and rhythm. I mean, the movie's so language forward in a way that movies aren't necessarily like that, and it opens with Carrie's amazing monologue. And I looked at it today. I mean, I've seen it, but re-watching it and realizing that the very first line of the movie, you're asking a question and you never wait for anybody to answer because you're just launched in. What is the first line?
So you've been good, right?
But like, it's just like gangbusters. I mean, it's such a gorgeous opening. It's so arresting. Can you talk about your experience working on doing the monologue?
It was a very bold stroke. I mean, I opened the script and there was this many, many pages of talking. And also the way you were shooting it was notated. So I also knew that it was intended that he would not cut away from that monologue and that I would be against a white wall, very starkly shot, and you wouldn't know who I was speaking to. And that wouldn't be revealed until Christina's monologue started. You ended up cutting away to Rachel, but that was not the original intention. So it was intimidating to see that language, but it's thrilling. And the other thing that was exciting about it is that Aza also promised that we would shoot in order. Now that means I had to kick off the thing, which is really intimidating when you respect your co-stars as much as I do. But knowing we were going to follow, like each day would be what came before, right? And we would start the day with what had happened, and we would continue the story. And the only time we didn't finish a scene was when J.O. came in at the end, and we shot that over 2 days, you said? And so, he said, she said, and so it was, I was so jazzed by the idea of all that language for all of us.
Yeah, and you really set us up, I think. I think watching you do that was a real, I don't know, it was a moment that of Natasha and I just being like, well, shit, okay, here we go.
Game on, Carrie Coon.
Punctuation. I'm married to a playwright. I follow all the punctuation.
And that was something we stayed true to every step of the way because, I mean, we did get to have 3 days of a bit of a rehearsal. And I don't know how many of those days or how much time was spent of us finding that rhythm together. And also finding a sound that made us related to one another. I mean, I start talking in a mid-Atlantic if I start hanging out with Carrie Coon for too long, and I start acting like Natasha Lyonne, like way too fast.
We all
and
do
so
that.
we had to find a way to sound like we were from the same family. And so we had that time, and then we also got to find the rhythm that was in the script, on the page, and that was also in Oz's head. And so that was, yeah, I mean, the language forward, it was so exciting to get to do that.
And Natasha, at the beginning, you don't really get a huge speech, but you have, it's like these little arias, but you have these beautiful silent eyeball arias, like you're responding, and there's the silence, which is so, I don't know, so great. You're so beautiful in the movie. I love you in it. It's so fantastic.
My little Tamara. It was something I was excited about because, yeah, I think I talk too much, and so I am always hyperverbal on screen. And I thought that was one of the more exciting challenges in reading it is what would it be like to have the opportunity to listen, and especially with these two, it's, you know, satisfying exercise in something else.
Yeah, that feels, that was really exciting to watch. The other thing that's really striking about the movie is that despite its like, you know, it mostly taking place inside this apartment, it still has so many cinematic gestures. It's so like, it's gorgeous, and it's, you know, cinema, but like it's cinematic, but it's in a, you know, domestic tiny environment. So can you talk about Sam Levy and that collaboration?
Yeah, I would say that it's true that we only had, you know, a few days together, but Sam and I started way early. Like I gave him the script pretty much around the same time as, you know, as they. So we were able to have at least 6 months of just getting to meet up and talk about these different framing and how we can really treat the space as equal to these characters, that as these characters are unveiling themselves bit by bit, that we'd also be unveiling this apartment, this, like, without having the apartment yet, but just knowing that if we're going to be in one location for so long, how do we tease it out, and how do we space it out, and how do we represent the kind of you know, distance between these sisters, even though they're in the same space, by isolating frames and just so really not understanding the layout of how they're connected, but also how the apartment's connected until you really need to know and you start putting that together. So that was kind of one of the great exercises, and also it was really like this. It kept going back to just chasing this rhythm, and knowing that I was going to cut the film, that conversation, it was great to have to talk to Sam and just discuss, okay, this is the pacing of the edits that I need, and that would help us inform the amount of angles that we would need so that we can actually collapse time or expand time in the ways that we wanted to.
I love the tableaus just throughout. I guess you use them in different, places, like once when the monitor is beeping and you're like,
Yeah.
cutting around the apartment, and then I forget where and just anyway, there's several little beautiful sequences of those still lives that are so, the chair, the couch, the kitchen, the washing machine, I don't know. Can you talk about, was that in the script, or was that something you were picking up when you were there, or?
It definitely was in this. The apartment that we shot in didn't look anything like that. So that's all production.
Wait, it wasn't going to look like that? Is that what you said?
No, it didn't look like that in real life, right? When we went into it, it was just a brand new kind of painted walls and very sparsely decorated. It was a young couple that lived there. So all that, like bringing that stuff in, it was in the script in terms of just getting a sense. What I was drawn to that apartment is that the bones were so strong. There was a foundation. And so the idea that we'd get a lot of potential backstory of just who these people are just from these isolated frames was something that I was excited about. But we're shooting film, and so I'm not looking at a monitor that represents what we're going to see. So I'm by Sam's side. I have an idea what he's shooting, but the kind of beauty that he was capturing was always kind of stunning when I get to see the dailies and just to go. So I had an idea in my mind, but where he brought that was just a whole other level.
And let's talk about the fact that you shot on film, which is it's so soft and pretty and warm. And what was that decision like? Was it hard to do because it's expensive and all the obvious reasons that producers don't like filmmakers to say, I really want to shoot on film. And they're like, yeah.
Well, Sam taught me something really good, which was to not do a budget for video. Just don't even open that up. Don't do two budgets, because that budget will always win. And so you'll go into, well, I'd have more days with this, and it's like, just never had the conversation. And that was great. I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm not going to have that conversation. We'll just never do that. But it also was in the letter that I had sent all of them with the script, which was like, hey, if you're up for doing this, we're going to shoot this on film in an apartment in order. I'll have final cut. It'll be our film. We'll be a team. This is a group. And so I'd pass that question on to them because that was very essential for me. I don't know how film was for.
When was the last time any of the three of you?
Moms of Beverly Hills, Tamara.
30 years ago.
Yes. It's very satisfying because it's limiting, and probably people don't do it that often because fear that they don't actually know what movie they're making yet. So I think it's really a testament to Oz's clarity of vision, which is what this entire experience has been. And here it made sense. Often it doesn't anymore.
To what extent? So what kind of ratio? How many takes were you doing? Just because that's a big thing that happens with film. You're not doing as many takes. So did it feel? How different did it feel?
I feel like when it comes to the amount of takes, it felt, I don't know, kind of on par with what I'm used to. But it was really the setups because it was so clear how he was going to shoot it and when we'd be occupying a frame by ourselves and when we'd be occupying when we start sharing the frame. And I think it was really the limitation of the setups more so than the amount of times we did something. I never felt like we couldn't do another take. I never felt, I never even thought about it, to be honest. Yeah. You?
But you felt the deliberateness of the
Yes.
shot the shooting, that it wasn't generic coverage, that it was.
Yes, which is so helpful because then you get to really figure out how you're using yourself in the space, knowing that you're not going to, well, maybe they'll just cut to the close up and I'll just do something weird with my feet, or whatever. Like you had to be really deliberate with your physicality and every part of you that's expressing yourself. Even if you're like, doing a downward dog in the back corner of the frame or something. So there was, you have to think about everything with much more specificity because of the limitation.
I just wanted to commit, with that, with starting the way that we did, I just wanted to commit to everything before and say, this is what we're doing. So we're not going to figure this out later. I'm not going to shoot coverage in that way that we'll know what the point of whose scene it is or where it's going on later in the edit room. I just always wanted to be like, if we have this idea, I don't know if it's gonna work out, but let's commit to that, and that forced it to.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the shot when Elizabeth is leaning against the chair and the wall is splitting the frame in half, and then there's two bits of business of people coming in and out, and it just creates this great, I don't know, there's like comedy and sort of the startle, and we're seeing it anyway, that's very fun use of the space. What else?
Tamara, I always talk about what you would say about Phil and Laura Linney on The Savages. You were like, they just came so ready. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, well, they did. I mean, for sure. I mean, they were so, we shot that on film. It was in the olden days when that wasn't even a question.
But you were like, we were in such a rush, but they were ready to cry. They were ready to do whatever. They were just up to speed.
Yeah.
It sort of had, I think of you saying that often, because I think what we mean when we say that Carrie was starting and raising the bar at that level, I was like, oh shit, this is a fucking Olympian sport. Let's go. Like, no takes, no time, no days, And Aza had it drawn out musically, exactly like a metronome of exactly what the film was. And no previs. Analog.
So you said that you had a paper, what do you mean? You did a paper, what?
Yeah, I'm not.
What is that?
Yeah,
I
didn't
know.
I didn't. Well,
Did you invent it?
Eccentric.
I don't think so, but for whatever reason, this thing about waiting for someone to die has this effect on time that I felt very, very confusing, and I wanted to. That was the one thing that I felt like I hadn't seen so much in films, which is the way things suddenly jumped to very quickly and some things moved. And so that's what got me sitting down writing, was like, can I chase this strange rhythm that happens between dreading something and then suddenly waiting for something, then needing for it to happen. And so when I wrote, I did have a very specific rhythm, and then I thought the best way to communicate it was to then make a paper, like a color-coded edit of who going through the script, like this person being this color, this person being that color, this person, and then I would get an idea of how the cuts would move. So it was just red, blue, yellow, and you'd kind of feel how things would rapidly.
What did that object look like? It was like
That was
this
sort
color.
of like,
What was it?
I don't know if you've seen A Beautiful Mind, but it sort of looked like
Yeah, it was the only way that I felt like I could see it myself. I could see, okay, this
So
is.
she's on. That's yellow for a while.
Yeah, this section,
and
and so each page had these multiple colors bouncing back and forth, and you'd kind of see oh, there's a score to it. And
you shared that with the actors.
I show them everything. I really felt like.
See that? I don't remember that.
I remember it distinctly.
You can only retain so much. You do so much.
Yeah. I offered everything that they wanted. If I had it, I offered it because I wanted this to be ours. I just wanted this to be, they could see this. And I invited, I had this idea, we'd watch the dailies together, which didn't happen because we're just tired. But I opened the edit room for anybody. Lizzie was the only one that took that up and took a look. And
You were invited?
yes.
I do remember the invite, but I just felt like after I'd seen the, color scheme, I felt like Aza knows exactly what movie he's making. I mean, God forbid I accidentally get in there and you know what it's like, editing and somebody says something, next thing you know, it's in, I mean, you knew exactly what the movie was. I was, at least, I just wanted to wait to see a cut, and by the time I saw it, it was,
There was nothing
as intended.
arbitrary about the process.
That's all I mean,
And
yeah.
you knew exactly how much money you needed, how much time you needed, and how you wanted to make it. And that was very enrolling for all of us, because there is a lot of arbitrariness in art. And we all know that the more personal and specific a story is, the more generalizable it is. And I don't see films written with this kind of form following function, wherein when the way that the sisters are occurring to the audience, it opens with the way they're occurring to each other. And you think, oh, Katie, ugh. And then, slowly, as their point of view gets complicated, it's happening while the audience's point of view is getting complicated. That is so deft. And I just don't see films written with that attention to structure. And it unfolds almost imperceptibly. It's working on the audience in an imperceptible way because it's deftly structured and written, and it's very tight. And it's thrilling to see something that considered. It's something I barely see in the theater, let alone in a lot of TV and film writing. There's no time for it in TV. You're filling a lot of space when you're making 8 or 10 episodes. You're not making a 90-minute thing. And so, it gets a little loose. And it's such a pleasure to get to do that. And then to do it in order is just what we get to discover in that process when we're living through it. We get to surprise ourselves. Settle down. We get to surprise ourselves in that process.
Here comes Lizzie. Go, Lizzie, go.
She twitches like this. It's so we get worried. And she's I'm just kidding. She's actually really still and kind of like a panther. She has this thing where she says how she gets small in a room. We're like, bullshit. You're
Well,
a
like, baby.
Yeah, that's not real at all. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying.
Arbitrariness.
Yeah, terrible.
I will say this, that we shot 17 days, but when you're not moving equipment to locations, that's worth 40 days, all our time was spent shooting. Everything was there, and we would, the crew would be up there, and we'd be able to shoot full scenes without the sense of getting rushed. And of course, it was surrounded by an incredible crew that were patient and one of the things that happened that first day when they did their scenes is that the whole crew witnessed them just go for it, and I felt like it had this, I could see them watching, and suddenly there was an effect where the crew was interested and just there and were game, and everybody just started following their lead in that way.
Well, I think what happens, it's so rare, is that hyper focus of everyone's on high alert and sort of all the noise that gets very distracting. I think arty types can't really handle as much as they think they can. Speaking for myself, I love taking in the whole world all at once, but to just focus, you used to do this to me a lot, Tamara, when you direct me. But it's almost just that kind of slow down and just get razor in. For some reason, we were always shooting, we were always on set. And I don't know, there's just nowhere to hide. And it's a miraculous thing that when you take away all those distractions and would you like a coffee? And how would you like your coffee? It's when all that goes away, a third thing happens that's so rare. And I think it was very meaningful to us.
Wow. Can you talk about finding that apartment, which seems so specific, and what was the process of finding the right space for you for the film? Finding a location in New York, whatever, but that specific apartment.
I wrote with them in mind, and I wrote for an apartment that I went to in high school, but not a apartment, but just a certain type of apartment that I would go to growing up here in the city that just felt like life happened, that there was a lot of drama in the walls that were trapped in there, and just had a history. You could just feel the history of the family and just all the living that had gone on in there. So I had a feeling for the place that I was looking for. And my partner, Diaz, who's really the person that, I
She's like they're like the good Polly Platt, Peter Bogdanovich.
Yeah, we're-
The good version. That's Diaz.
But she's the person that, you know, I give the first draft to, and she's the person I trust the most. And so the two of us went out looking for this place. And I reached out to all these kids that I grew up with to see if their parents still lived in the places that they did, you know, because this whole rent stabilized thing in New York, like this is gold, right? The family, like this is, and so I was like, do you have the place? And that ultimately led me to a complex that that Diaz and I went, and we just put all these, you know, flyers up and just tried to get people to call us, and they did. And we wound up, and then we brought on a locations person, Jeff Brown, was amazing, and reached out to the building, and they were up for it to send out an email to every apartment. And so we got a lot of response from that. And it was great, too, because these were people that wanted they needed, like, it wasn't just like a place that, like, a lot of things had shot through. Like, this would have been helpful and meaningful in their lives to shoot there. So we were invited kind of into the building. And this one place, when we walked into, yeah, it was totally, like, different decorated, but I could feel like it just felt like it felt suddenly very, very correct. And it meant shooting in this building, being like not having crazy hours. You know, we're not going to shoot through past 12 o'clock. We're going to work with the daylight, and when we have to deal with night, we have to deal with how we're going to black out the windows until we turn to that way. So it would shape things.
And is the courtyard
The courtyard is right down there. The weed shop is a few blocks away, and yeah, like everything. It just all fit in correctly. And then it really that amazing weird thin wall, like that was just like it was made for film.
Yeah. Like a weird New York detail. That wall is this thin. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It looks like fake, but it's real.
It's there to separate, to help the family not be in each other's space all the time.
Yeah, right. So does that mean did you have two apartments, like one to not be on set in, and then that, or was everybody always in that space?
I mean, they shared an apartment.
Oh, okay. You
living there, but they had a
But you
place.
lived in an apartment in the building?
No, we did not.
They did not. They shared, while we were shooting, though, there were spaces for them to,
Right,
other
like
apartments.
another
I'm a
apartment for
smoker,
like a green
Tamara.
room.
Carrie and
I
were
was.
treated to ours, and Natasha had her own.
Okay. And
then we had, and we,
I quit. So
She was smoking out the window, and now she's not smoking anymore. We're very proud of her.
I would never smoke in a building.
She would never do that.
But I think emotionally also, it felt like these two different stories were happening.
Yeah, that was why we did it. But then we also had the basement.
the basement was the whole production office. And it was massive.
And the building loved
Also,
you? They didn't hate you?
They were
Most of the
amazing.
time.
They were amazing. They let us, I mean, because there was, you know, we wanted to do this without any announcements. We didn't want any, we just wanted this film to exist once it actually was finished. And so it was like we existed, but they let us, we'd go there and we'd say hi. And I don't know, it felt really, you know, we stopped when there was piano lessons next door. Remember? Like,
Oh, it's
right.
terrible to ask
Yeah.
them to
Yeah, we were
Natasha
like-
yelled at some people on the street who were being loud in a very New York, but lovely New York way, direct.
Well, I know I was trying to,
Yeah.
first AD it,
Yeah, you did.
So we were like, what do we do? The sound.
Friday night at 11 o'clock, and you were like, "Hey, New York!"
Making a
I was like,
movie.
let me handle this one. Hey, look, so we're shooting this movie up here, you see? And you could just step it. Oh, thanks, that's great. God, you guys are great. It worked, right?
Yeah.
It worked.
I mean,
New
if you also-
Yorkers, we're
Sam
very
laughed about
soft.
that for the rest of the job.
Yeah,
Sam,
that's true.
our DP, laughed about that night. He just every time he thought of it, he laughed.
I
so
mean,
hard.
part of it felt like we were just making a home movie for Ozzy to process stuff.
no one would ever.
And
see
we
it.
were all really excited to be there for that.
Well, because accidentally you end up processing your own stuff. Thank you. That was an end of It's true, though. I mean, I think you don't realize, the state of grief you're in constantly until you're in a situation where you get to sit in it, with people at this level. And, it's very soft, and then you have to distract yourself. And all those things, like it really hits. It's like you have to get very quiet. And then, you know, bad things happen when you sit still too long. You just like sit and listen and it's quiet. You know, like real feelings happen and stuff, so.
Those.
Yeah, so I think Aza took us with him.
Well, it's given me something to look forward to every day as I've gone through this. You know, I just enjoyed being on set so much and just watching them. I just couldn't believe I'd be there all the time behind the camera and just couldn't believe what I was being given. And I would look forward to the next day. And it was just, same thing in the edit room. I'd go into the edit room. There's things that I just couldn't see that they were doing until I was in the edit room. And you just see these looks and these glances, the things that you can feel, and you feel like you have them, but you don't know that they're there. Same thing working on the sound, on the score, and every level, and then all the way up into this. It's really just been actually a quite joyful experience.
What is the the piano pieces?
That's the next door girl we couldn't afford to. No,
the eighth grader.
she did a wonderful job. Thank God she was so talented.
It's so pretty. It's just such a nice tone.
Besides giving them the script, and Giovanna Depo, who plays Benji, I also gave him the script. That's also somebody that I wrote it with in mind. But I also heard Rodrigo Amarante's music, who's a musician that I've loved and known, and so sent him the script. And so he wound up writing a bunch of that music just based on the script. And so that first piece you're talking about was just the first thing that he wrote just based on the script. And it just felt like, also that end song he had given me as like a demo version of it that I could listen to and play to them and listen as I walked to set or walked home, and just kind of, it gave me this anchor. It just felt like, everything felt like, okay, this is my instinct and I'm just going to trust that instinct, and then Rodrigo completely
Isn't that
delivered.
wild? Like, nobody does this shit anymore. Like, I mean, Hal Ashby and Cat Stevens, like, I just, it doesn't, it's real, I just will not stop being in awe. The deeper we go in this process, it's more and more revealed how clearly Aza saw the film, and I just think it's so rare and extraordinary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh God, now I was so excited by that what I was going to say went out of my head.
Sorry, Tamara.
Yeah, thanks, Natasha.
Whatever.
I do want to say one thing that was really, so I was thinking about that today, because I met up with Rodrigo quite before we started shooting, and the only thing I played for him was the Five Little Ducks song, and that immediately started giving. So that first piano piece is a riff on that. It's just like him hearing that and then going and using some of those tones to start going into his own direction. And a lot of the cues are kind of based on the song that Lizzie sings. And it helped me, like, it was something that I could play him and say, this is the only piece of music that I know is going to be part of it. And that helped him. And then the other thing was, you know, in the script it says that the heartbeat monitor is going on this whole time, and that's like one thing to write it, but then a very different thing to actually go, like, am I really gonna have beeping through? How's this gonna work? He took the sounds of the beeps before I started writing and just started thinking about how that would affect his music. And then Gene Park, who did the sound design, was just incredible in terms of like how those beeps come in and out. We just worked very closely to think about, like, when do you stop hearing them when you're living in this situation so that they could actually disappear, and they would disappear for us, and when could they come, and then how do they shift, because they really are shifting in tempo and actually tones throughout as we're going through this story, you know? So the music side of it was really essential.
I was thinking when I was looking at it today, how, like, clever writing-wise, smart, the obituary, how it gives you so much like narrative information, but in this really sneaky way. There's just a lot of really
That's
good-
like a straight Breakfast Club ripoff.
Is it?
Yeah.
I love you.
Well,
I barely remember the Breakfast
Oh,
Club.
I watched that film
Older
quite
than
a
you.
lot.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah. Yeah. It's one of those films where you think like, oh, whatever, and then you watch it and you're like, oh, that's a strong choice. That's a fucking strong. Like it's full of like long takes that you just wouldn't believe. Like that's, and then you hear that Dede Allen was next door cutting this whole thing as they're shooting, and just like the amount of specific. It's just it's actually.
Wait,
like,
so what's the
so
obituary?
this whole idea
equivalent?
that they go in and they have to like define themselves is their punishment, right? And then they're working on this thing, and then at the end, right, Brian kind of gives this narration of we're who you think you are. Like it's a beautiful arc, and that's always stayed with me. And once Katie, it just made really a lot of sense. Katie's gonna get the DNR, she's gonna get this paperwork. Once I realized like, oh, that's gonna be her task, one of the tasks, like cooking, getting this paperwork and getting this obituary done, then I realized like we can get to this place that will, guide us.
Yeah. I don't know why I know this. Maybe because you told me that your film experience prior to this was really tortured, or troubled or hard or something.
The not the actual shoot. The shooting was amazing. Like I cannot tell you what a gift that was. And there's really no way that I get to this film without that movie, specifically working with Michelle Pfeiffer, because I watched her. That wasn't a case where I was able to meet with her on a weekly basis and go through the script for like months. It was a very different type of, and I just saw how precise, like I get to see up close how she was going through everything, asking me questions, and we just have, I never seen someone up close prepare so meticulously and be so clear.
We're right here, honey.
No, I wasn't with you guys. Wasn't there for the
I'm
process.
kidding.
It was like I actually got to see her do this, and it taught me like, oh, this is something I want to try the next film with that type of approach. And so that's that. But the shooting, the actually getting the film together and how to figure out the financing, all that was absolutely like I wanted to go very, very much the opposite way, and that's why, one of the motivations of this one.
So meaning that you wanted ownership, you wanted more.
I just want to know everything was there. It was set to go. I'd go to them. We had the right amount of days. We had the money that we needed. Everything was just prepared, and that thing. And I would go to the producers that I went to were all people that were just like, it just all, I felt like actually casting begins from the first, person you bring on. Mm-hmm. It's not just actors.
I mean, it's really amazing, I think. Like, it's very hard right now, and has been, to figure out the perfect arrangement of things on a list to get a movie going. And I think the fact that you know exactly who to go to, who to trust, exactly how much you could do it for based on you being involved every step of the way with other films, and understanding within all of your limitations everything the minimum of everything you needed. And it was such a minimum. And the fact we never had an expectation anything like this. Like, this is wild, to just be in this theater and having this conversation about it. There was no expectation. It was just the doing and the process. And Netflix has taken care of it in the way that we hoped it would be, with creating a print that you got to watch tonight, and having prints in multiple cities that people will get to see. But it's because of the integrity of the choice from the very first step that he took on this project, and it's such a learning moment of what you can do if you understand all of the elements and how to navigate it. And it's at a time when it's so hard to figure this out right now, it's such a direction of hope to me, of the potential of what you can do with so little.
I mean, but that was the
and
ethos
Tamara,
of
to your
independent
thing,
film. Wait, what?
I'm talking on top of you. if Tamara's okay, that means I'm okay, because that's how it works when you play someone in a movie. But I think really what you guys are talking about is because of all of these negative experiences, it's like finally you have the necessary education to kind of, for Ozzy to go in there and do it so exacting. But it was brutal to kind of learn how to do it right, like, unfortunately.
But I mean, this is why I approached them first, because we are filmmakers. Like, I think we're all aware of what it takes, and the idea that we're just we're gonna have a relationship as actor director. This was a team that made this. This truly was a team. So we're done. It's a wrap. They're about to start cleaning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight, and thank you, Tamara.
Thank you.